This is Media Sales Mastery, the podcast for media sales professionals. In each episode, we bring you information, insights, and ideas from some of the industry's top thought leaders. Connect with us to help pick the topic and guide the show.
This is Media Sales Mastery, the podcast for media sales professionals. I'm your host, Jamie Wood. Okay, going to mix it up with the format. We are doing a live Q&A from LinkedIn this week, which is pretty cool. Thank you to those of you who are submitting questions this way. There is a video feature in LinkedIn. There is also an audio feature in LinkedIn. And what I really appreciate is when people are submitting questions via those formats, I can actually take that audio, stitch it directly into the podcast. So thank you. Keep doing that if you are comfortable. If you want to send me a text question, that is completely fine too. So I'm somewhat ill-prepared for this. I haven't done a lot of preparation. However, what I want to do is just react to these in real time to probably give some thoughts without really any kind of major consideration. And the main reason I want to do that is because from what I can see, these are quite universal issues that we all encounter. They're things that I've probably encountered through my career, or I've coached salespeople through in their career too. So going to keep it very raw this week. I am coming to the end of this season. I'm going to take a short break after this pod, go back and reformulate a whole new season with a bunch of new topics and a bunch of new guests. Won't be a long break, but if you are hanging out to listen to some more content, I would really recommend maybe going back through the library, having a listen to some of the stuff from back in like season 2 or 3. This is nearing my 3rd year of doing the podcast now, so I'm very keen to just get better every time, but I also would really encourage people to go back and trawl through the archives as well, because it helps my downloads and it's also still some good stuff. That is it from me. We are going to jump into the topic now. Here is the first question.
Hey Jamie, I've seen you post a lot about keeping sales presentations and proposals short and simple. What are some of the tips for cutting long proposals down and not losing all the key information?
It's a great question, and yes, you're absolutely correct. I post about this ad nauseum, and I'm not the expert, but I would say that this is backed a lot by science. There really is a lot of research from companies like Proposify, and I think even companies like HubSpot. They've actually gone and had a look at the elements of the most successful sales proposals. And what consistently comes up is that proposals that are actually shorter are the ones that have higher close rates and are more successful. I think it just comes down to how much information we can feasibly take in as human beings when we're being presented to. I think it also forces people to really only include the absolute most relevant pieces of information. And I think there's nothing better than just a great story or a great narrative built into a deck. So from the point of view of how do you make things feel simpler, for me, there's a couple of things I do. The first thing is have a read of the way that media case studies are written. So I've posted about this too, but if you ever read a case study, very rarely is it more than a page or two, and it usually will break the client's situation down into 3 or 4 segments. What was the client's challenge that they encountered? What was a relevant consumer insight that they unearthed through the process of building the solution? What was that solution? What was the execution? And what were the results of the campaign? So that is fundamentally the way you would look at a case study being built. But I would actually take that framework and really try to apply it to how you would also sell a solution. Find the 4 to 5 section or the 4 to 5 headings that you think could really sum up the whole proposal, and then just start to fill the content in underneath those. I mean, one of those great rules is the rule of 3. If you can find a way to group a proposal into 3 sections or 4 sections at most, and then assign the relevant content to each section, you'll find that it becomes really easy to actually then simplify what it is that you're trying to say. One of the other hacks that works really well is the idea of using each slide in a proposal as a vehicle to sell one message and one key message. And so the hack that I always use is write the heading, and the heading is usually making a point. Something along the lines of, competitor channels are already cluttered, might be the heading. The next thing you do is you prove it with data or you represent it with a strong visual on the body. So that's where you would put a graph that shows something like a client's competitive spend from AdX relative to their competitors all spending on the same medium. Or you might just put a really strong visual of a bunch of different creative from different clients in the category, all fundamentally doing the same thing. And then your key takeaway is what you take away from that slide. So it could be something as simple as we need to jump into another channel, we need to get increased share of voice, we need to look at a different way of cutting through the competitive clutter. So there are some great visual examples. I know I'm talking about this on the fly, but there's some great visual examples I can share if anyone's keen to see them. My big thing is 1 point per slide. So really just have an understanding of what is this one slide trying to say. Because if you've got a 10 slide deck, for example, you're making 10 points. Do we think people are going to be able to retain 10 points? But actually think about the decks that we're building and putting in front of clients at the moment. There might be 5 to 6 messages on each individual slide. So usually I like to think of it as 1 point per slide. And the final hack that I think works really well is if somebody was just to read the headings of the proposal, then that should actually be enough for them to fundamentally understand what the proposal is about and be able to then really articulate back to you what they think the opportunity looks like. The other thing, and this one's hard, just self-impose a limit. There's a lot of agencies, in particular advertising agencies, but I think even a lot of clients who really actually are starting to push back on publishers and ask to not include a proposal, just to include a media schedule and an email summary, or more rarely, but I think it's something that will continue to become more of a trend, is giving a limit on how many slides a publisher can actually use in a proposal. So you've got a 10 slide limit or a 5 slide limit. I think if you actually set that limit yourself, and there's not any deck that you can't build in 10 slides, set that limit yourself. You'll be very surprised how quickly you prioritize what information is relevant versus what information can be left out or put into the appendix. Okay, and our next question.
Hello, Jamie. Loving the podcast. Do you have any tips for keeping other internal departments accountable? I've got a few people who are supposed to be in sales support roles but don't seem to care about clients or revenue. They seem to take the bare minimum approach to their work and skate away from any accountability when things go wrong. How do you get them to care more? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question. Get them to care more. That's the hardest part of this. I think the reality, particularly if you work in a large publisher or a media organization, not everyone is going to care as much as you about revenue or client outcomes. And that's just a fact of life. Not to be snide, but I would fathom, I guess, you don't care whether the financial controller submits all of their reporting on time. I would imagine you don't care if the operations manager is, hitting their departmental KPIs as much as they probably do. There is a level of just having to own the fact that your function is always going to mean more to you than it is to them if they're a shared resource. If they are in a sales support department or function, meaning their primary focus and their primary responsibility is to be there to help fuel and support the sales team, then that actually is a little different, particularly if you are finding that you're getting some level of unnecessary pushback or just limited cooperation. I've always thought that one of the hardest things to manage is not people necessarily doing a bad job, but people just taking a very passive approach to those types of roles. So what I would say, the first thing I would say is, and I'm not trying to kind of put the onus back on yourself, but do you fully understand their world and their pressure? It's very easy to assign ill intent when somebody isn't delivering work to the quality or on the timeline you require, but do you have a full understanding of what a day in their life actually looks like? Are there pressures outside of what you have visibility on that would actually be impacting their ability to deliver the work or the support to you in the richest fashion it could be? What are some of the things that are important to them? What are their drivers? What are their departmental KPIs? It's only to just get an understanding and to better inform. I find it can be very easy sometimes to assign ill intent or to just label bad behavior as just being anti-sales, when ultimately it could be a plethora of different things that are causing these people some challenges. One of the things that you'll find is if you do actually spend some time trying to understand that, you'll find oftentimes there is process conflict at play, meaning that there's a misalignment in what it is that you feel is important and what it is that you require in order to be successful in the marketplace, and what it is that they feel they need in order to be successful in their role. So oftentimes it can manifest as interpersonal conflict. You can feel like you don't like these people. They're not the ones carrying the budget. Therefore, they need to really be bending over backwards to support you. They don't have the accountability, as you say. I think a lot of these things are about really trying to isolate what are some of the causal factors that are manifesting as this behavior. And I think it's really important to just have a candid conversation with these people at a time where the heat isn't on, right? So if somebody has delivered you a piece of work late, they've missed an internal deadline, it's caused you to have to stay back late and fix something, it's really thrown the entire workflow into a bit of disarray, it's really frustrated you, it's not good enough, it's not acceptable, and you'd love nothing more than to just pick up the phone and give them a bit of a dressing down. That's not the time to address the issue, right? The time to address the issue is when the heat's a little bit off, a couple of weeks, or let's say days later, when you've cooled down, when you've gained some perspective, and when you have the ability to go up to that individual and just go, look, can we just grab 10 minutes to have a chat and debrief, last week? Or can we go have a coffee? Because this seems to be coming up a bit. We seem to be having this same challenge and problem. And fortunately, we've solved it now, but it's happened a couple of times. We got to fix this or it's going to continue to happen. And I don't think either of us want that. That takes a lot of preparation. That's hard work. And that requires you sometimes to decide whether you want to win an argument or whether you want to get a solution to the problem. I find a lot of media salespeople want to win the argument rather than actually find a way to be a bit more malleable, lead with a bit of empathy, have a bit of an open conversation, and ultimately get this issue addressed in a more longer term and sustainable fashion. The final thing I'd say as a sales director, if it gets to a point where these people feel like they genuinely are causing a blockage, they are actively working against the best interests of the sales team or the clients, it's time to escalate to someone like myself. And that is fundamentally the job that I'm in, is having to have those tough conversations and identifying where things in the sales organization and the sales process aren't working. So I would really make a point of trying a couple of different approaches first and really making a point of trying to have a conversation with these people and get a resolution directly between yourselves before escalating. But if you don't feel like you've got that outcome you need, escalation would be the last resort, but it would be what I would recommend you do if all else fails. Okay, next question.
Hi, Jamie. I run a sales team of 8 people. We are a trade publisher and focus on a couple of key industries. There's a lot of noise around economic downturn, and I can sense that the clients are getting a little nervous about advertising, especially longer term. Do you have any advice for the sales team around how to calm nervous clients?
Yeah, very topical question right now. The first thing I'd recommend for people, if you're wanting to calm clients or have a level of authority when talking around this particular topic in market with clients, is you have to understand what a downturn is. And that takes time to really learn, right? That requires you to go and do your own independent research. It requires you to really take some time to get an understanding of what those macroeconomic factors are and look at it from the perspective of what is a downturn? Like, how could you articulate what a downturn is quite simply, but how could you have a really broad knowledge and understanding of how that impacts different industries with a particular focus on the clients that operate within your customer base? And if you're a trade publisher, you're going to have a really good understanding of the industries, in particular, and the impact, because I would imagine a big part of your publisher or your content would be focusing on what a downturn means for them. So for those of you who are, I guess, new to this idea of selling in a downturn, maybe you've only been in the industry for, well, we've kind of been in a down market the last couple of years, but if you've if you've not been in a situation where you've heard that particular phrase be used, really a downturn is something that poses an opportunity, is completely irrelevant, or can become a real challenge depending on where you operate, who your clients are, what your particular proposition is. What I would say universally is that this whole methodology of solution selling, it's still very much relevant. In fact, it's more relevant in a downturn. Solution selling is all predicated on this idea of you go into a business, you uncover a need or a problem, and then you tailor a media solution to fix that problem. And I actually posted this on LinkedIn recently. You would argue that in a downturn, there's actually more opportunity for solution selling because you've got more clients that have problems. The problems look different. It's not a case of something like, hey, we need to go and find a way to launch this new product to market. It might be something along the lines of, hey, we've got dwindling advertising budgets, or we've got more scrutiny on our return on investment, or we feel like our competitors are out shouting us in the marketplace because they're bigger than us and they've got bigger budgets and they can withstand a bit of a downturn in terms of revenue for themselves. So I would say that there is actually opportunities abound in a downturn, but you've got to be really well equipped to figure out where it is and to just reframe the conversations you're having in market. I would say, and I know the question was around how do you calm nervous clients, but the other thing is also making sure that you're prospecting the right clients. So making sure you're targeting clients who would still have a need to be met in a downturn, would potentially be in a growth, have an opportunity for growth in a downturn. And there's no shortage of clients who do actually prosper when the economy is tight. Quick service restaurants are a great example. It's cheap food. It's a bit of a treat. It's a bit of escapism. TV streaming and media do quite well in downturns because there's a lot less money being spent on other leisure activities. And again, it's about escapism. So you can think about categories more holistically and go, look, would this category be impacted, or would there actually be an opportunity with the right message to really go out and get ahead of this thing? The big one for me, I think, is it's really incumbent to really put a focus on giving an advertiser value for money in a downturn. So if they've got a finite budget, if they need their budget to work harder, if they have more scrutiny on the budget and where their spend is going, or if they just genuinely need to make sure that the campaign works, it's really about making sure that you are delivering meaningful business value for their marketing and advertising investment. So sometimes that is about discounting. I'm not going to shy away from that. Sometimes that's about more bonus allocation. It is about price reductions from time to time to give them more inventory to then put in the market. But a lot of it is also about making sure that they feel that their investment is working as hard as possible for them. And that can come in many different ways. It can come from giving them access to different market research. It can come from the quality of your thinking. It can come from the way you package your inventory. It can even come from identifying if they are overinvested in certain media that are quite expensive and offering them a more cost-efficient way to reach those audiences. So, an example might be if TV is completely full and if and I'm not having a go at TV, this is just a broad example, but let's say television are completely full, their price point or their average rates to get inventory away on TV is going up, and we're in a downturn where a client's budget needs to work harder. Maybe you've got an opportunity to show how your medium can deliver great reach into the same audience more cost efficiently. That's the type of thing I'm thinking, and that was a terrible way to articulate it, but you kind of get the point I mean. The other thing is really have an understanding of, are they trying to take share from their competitors? Are they trying to grow their market? Are they just trying to kind of retain existing clients? And a lot of advertising is just about that as well. So sometimes it is about really making sure that clients understand there are more things to do than just go out and try to advertise for new customers. And then the final one is just all about positioning. I've seen many businesses prosper through economic downturns. Auto brands are fantastic at doing that. They are really good at showing a way to really give a consumer price value equation that is really attractive during a downturn. Like I said, I know there's a lot of fast food are particularly good at it. I think even, Foxtel were a great example during the GFC, they really made a point of saying, save money from going out and from spending on leisure, and get a subscription and stay home and sort of cocoon inside your house a bit more. So, subscription TV might be a bit of a luxury in an economic downturn, but with the right positioning and messaging, it was actually reframed as a really nice opportunity. So don't underestimate the power that creative can really play. And if you're in a business that has a great creative team and has some great creative resources, or if you yourself want to flex your own creative muscle, sometimes it's about just thinking about your customer right now and how they might be able to tweak their message or their creative in the market in order to kind of reframe a downturn as an opportunity, or to make their product or their proposition slightly more appealing in the context of an economic downturn. Okay, and our final question is all the way from New Zealand.
Hey bro, got any tips for how to close deals quicker? I feel like the stuff sits in my pipeline forever and I'm constantly chasing the clients for updates. How do you get them to move a little bit faster?
This is a difficult one, and this is going to sound like a cop-out, but there isn't a silver bullet when it comes to closing business. You have to really go through every step of a sales process diligently. You have to do a lot of things right in order to make the business close. There aren't really too many tactics that I can think of that can help somebody close a deal that isn't structurally sound or isn't compelling. So let's assume that you've gone through a really diligent process already and you've got a couple of pieces of business that are sitting in your pipeline, and you want to kind of get them closed and hit the revenue line as soon as you can. And let's assume that you're getting great buying signals as well. The first thing I would say is that it's worth really having a look at the opportunities that are sitting in your pipeline and really have a think about if there's anything within those opportunities that is inherently time sensitive in nature. And so what I mean by that is there a piece of inventory that you've included in your solution that is only available in the timing that the client is looking to be active? I.e., could they potentially lose an opportunity to sponsor the breakfast show on a radio station? Could they lose a really signature large format out-of-home site because it's not available? Could they miss an opportunity to have some form of advertising within a particular show or within a particular week that's heavily promoted on the TV network? What are the things that are inherently time-sensitive in the schedule? You can think outside the box too. Are there things happening in the marketplace that are worth being across? Do they have a competitor who's heavily in market at the same timing or at the moment? Do they have a big event happening in the city where there's going to be increased audiences around? Those are the types of things that you can actually cherry pick out of your solution and just kind of reinforce with the client why it's really critical and important that we look to move quicker and we look to move now as far as this particular opportunity goes. The next one would just be around, are there some, incentives that you can offer? So, incentives to close out. I think people often get quite feel like this is quite a salesy tactic, and it actually is. But if your heart's in the right place, and if you're coming from a place of really wanting to give the client the best outcome or solution, I would really recommend having a think about if there are some things you could put into place to really sweeten the deal and incentivize the client to move quicker. So the most obvious one, it would absolutely just be additional inventory to support the campaign. If you have a look at your avails, if you have a look at some of the things that might be unsold but could actually be rolled into this client solution, I think it's really worthwhile pulling those together, putting a call into the client and just letting them know that there are a couple of unique opportunities here. They are time sensitive, but if we were able to confirm this campaign to proceed, I could actually leverage some additional value to make it work a lot harder. Some other incentives can be used from time to time. I think it's really up to you and understanding your particular customer profile and client's profile, but sometimes there are things that are non-campaign based incentives that can really work. There's that old thing of putting a $500 gift card into a media proposal for a direct client right before Christmas. Always makes it a little bit easier for them to decide to sign off before December if they want to get that gift card and go and do their Christmas shopping. So those types of things can help. Use them sparingly, but they definitely can help. My other thing I would say is, you don't want to get to a place where you're hounding the client or harassing them, but, being able to kind of qualify what some of the blockages are in the client's world are really worthwhile doing. So just having some really good targeted questioning. Hey, look, I noticed this has been sitting here for a while. Got a feeling that when we presented and when we took you through it, it was all quite exciting and you were very, very excited to potentially move forward with the opportunity. Just want to get an understanding of what the internal review and approval process is looking like right now. Has anything come up that I need to be across that is giving you some area for concern in this particular scenario? So not being afraid to kind of call that out. If you feel deals are sitting in the pipeline a bit longer than they should, despite getting some good buying signals, sometimes it's just about worth understanding why in the client's world that might be the case. And very often it might just be that there's a pretty antiquated process on their end they have to go through. The final one, and look, this is again, not trying to be a cop-out, but closing business. I find a lot of people who have a lot of emphasis on closing business typically want to close business because their pipeline is almost scraping into their forecast, meaning, if they've got a budget of $100,000, they've got $70,000 booked, they've pretty much got 30 grand exactly sitting in the pipeline that if it doesn't close, they're not going to hit their number. The biggest thing that can really take the pipeline anxiety away is just having a lot more pipeline, having more opportunity than what you actually need to close out your number, having more people vying for the things that you want to sell than available things. That can absolutely help because you can actually create a little bit of urgency with clients as well. You don't want to get to a place where you start auctioning off inventory, but if you've got 2 or 3 clients that are all vying for the same opportunity, and you've communicated ethically and transparently that there are more clients looking at that, there is no harm in picking up the phone and letting them know that they are potentially going to lose that opportunity as there are more people vying for the same one. Again, this one feels a bit rambly for me. I wouldn't say that closing business is a particular area of specialization for me. It's been a long time since I have actually really been in sort of that selling mode where I'm constantly trying to close out pieces of business in a pipeline. But those would be the things that I would initially try and recommend you have a bit of a think about. And I wish you the very best with getting a solution for that particular issue. Okay, thank you very much. That's the end of the episode. I am a bit sick of hearing my own voice, but hopefully that gave some support to those people who might also be experiencing those challenges or similar challenges. Just keep the questions coming, guys. Going to take a short break, as I mentioned at the start, but I will be back very soon. Probably middle of October, I'll kick it back off again with some more episodes, and then we'll sort of finish the year. So in the meantime, hit me up on LinkedIn, go back and listen to previous episodes that we have done, and wish you the very best in the world of media sales.